I'm John Newton. I'm Director of Health Improvement at Public Health England, and it's my pleasure to introduce this next session to you. Before I do that, though, I've got a question for you. Have you had a good day? Yes. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Have you had a good day? Yes. Right, okay. We'll take that. But it has been I think it's been a great day. So thank you for, there's been a huge range of talks, range of sessions, great questions from the audience, great engagement. So thank you very much. So this is, I have to say, one of my favorite sessions of the conferences of the last couple of years. It's a chance to unwind a little bit more relaxed, in conversation with, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce our guests this year, which is Jacqueline de Rojas, in conversation with Paul Armstrong. And I'm not going to give away all the secrets. These sessions are an opportunity for us to learn from a sector outside public health. This year, we're expecting to hear about the tech sector. So Jacqueline has, as you can see from the program, an extraordinary career of achievement in the tech sector. We also expect to hear about leadership and about diversity in leadership roles. So I think there's going to be lots of interest in the discussion. Paul is a tech advisor and author, and I think ideal person to ask questions. And I have explained to our guests that they may not have quite realized what they're letting themselves in for, that this is a quiet, cozy chat, conversation that just happened to be a couple of hundred people listening to what you have to say. So I'm very grateful to you both for coming. It's a great opportunity for us to hear some of your thoughts on anything that you choose to talk about, and we'll look forward to hearing it. There will be a chance for some questions at the end, so those in the audience, if there are things that stimulate you, that do think of questions. But I'm going to hand over now to Paul and to Jacqueline. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, John.
Can we just welcome you? Yeah.
Brilliant. So, Jacqueline, Love Island. Let's talk. No, it's my absolute pleasure and honour to be here today. Thank you ever so much. Jacqueline has a laundry list of accomplishments. So you are sitting with one of the greats, one of the luminaries of tech in the UK. Let me just read you a few and that sort of stuff, because I wrote them down and I think it's worth it. President of techUK, co-chair of Institute of Coding, non-exec director for Rightmove, amongst others, Hall of Fame for Computer Weekly, most influential woman in IT recipient, listed on Brett's influence list, that's hard to get on, awarded tiny things, awarded CBE for services to international trade and technology, passionate advocate for women and minority in tech, works with the Girl Guides, loads of other things as well. Jacqueline, is there anything you don't do?
I don't normally read out a laundry list of acknowledgements
I think you should when you've got that. I think, come on, I think there's lots of people that do amazing things in the world, but that's a lot more than most.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You are incredibly savvy and passionate about diversity and tech inclusion. Talk to me about what that means in 2019 going into 2020.
Well, I think we are in a very fast-changing environment. We can't uninvent technology. So just to say, we might as well get used to it being around. And I think what I'm seeing is that one of the most important areas is that we have diversity in the design of technology as we move forward. And I'll give you an example, a story I heard recently where a doctor couldn't get into her locker at the gym, and they couldn't for the life of them figure out why, and they changed out the swipe card. They looked at why access wasn't being granted a number of times, and in the end it was hard-coded that doctor was a male job title, and that was why she was refused entry. And the reason that's important is not obviously because the locker room is the most important place to get to, but it's that it doesn't take a big leap of imagination to think, well, the small moments of unconscious bias in all of the things we design could have the most momentous of outcomes. And, a 737 MAX might fall out of the sky, not just because of a software upgrade that wasn't properly educated into the pilot, but maybe the female pilot couldn't verbally override it on autopilot. Just imagine if that had been that scenario. And I just put that forward as one of the biggest reasons for diversity and inclusion is not just the noble cause that equality is, of course, important, but it's that diversity in the design team suddenly really matters who's writing our digital future. And that keeps me up at night, I think. It's one of the things that we can all take away as something to think about is who are we recruiting into the design, development, and implementation teams, and who is writing our digital future.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of these people don't have overview on who gets hired. They'll write something and it'll go up and that sort of stuff. Where along that process do these guys need to put their hand up and say, no, I don't want it like that. It shouldn't take me 3 months to change a job description and that sort of stuff. How have you seen that manifest in other industries which would help what these guys are going to go through?
I think one of the biggest issues with recruitment is that the job description we use to recruit the next person is a rehashed one of the person before. We very rarely start from scratch. And unfortunately, going into the future, I think we have to be more focused and detailed on what we actually want and who we want in our teams. Otherwise, if we're not specific, we're going to get what we've always got because we've just rehashed the same old job description. We don't pay enough attention to that level of detail when we're hiring people.
I think that's an interesting point, because as you move into, as generations move up and into the workforce and that sort of thing, we're starting to see new attitudes and that sort of thing come in. And a lot of those people have been digitally savvy for the longest time and that sort of stuff. Would you agree that it's probably in most of the people's benefit in this room to start to learn to code, perhaps, or try and see the world a little bit differently when they're hiring people? How would you the phrase that they always use is burst your bubble. It's not just about what you read, it's about who you surround yourself with. Would you agree with that?
I think it is who you surround yourself with. I think should you learn to code or not, I think if it floats your boat, absolutely have a go. Mm-hmm. But, coding is it's a bit like Lego bricks. If you love Lego, you'll love coding. And coding is not the answer to everything, though. What I would say is that as the world changes, lots of people say we should be worried about robots and machines taking our jobs. But I think it's more about we should probably commit ourselves to lifelong learning and micro-learning all the way through our career, because if we don't do that, then we are not going to be able to keep pace with all the change. I don't think it's the robots that are going to get us in the end. I think it's whether we can reskill ourselves every 10 years or less. And that will be something we should take away, not in terms of does my manager say I should learn something new? I think it's more a personal commitment to lifelong learning in this new digital future.
How do you manifest that in the people that you work with and yourself and that sort of thing? Because there's only 24 hours in the day. We have the same amount of time as Beyonce, but she has an army of people around her. That's why she can fly around the world and do X, Y, and Z. There's a realistic 9 to 5 for a lot of people and that sort of stuff. How do you carve out time? Or give these guys some tips to really help them.
Yeah, so I
think
there are some really, one of the things we don't have anymore is we have the attention span of a dried gnat, I think. So we're carving out time to do less and less long-term learning. So I would encourage people to do much shorter, sharper interventions in terms of learning. And it's all over YouTube. You can YouTube anything these days, almost anything.
And good and bad.
Good and bad. Yeah, good and bad. And let's not get onto the ethics yet, but we can.
We're coming.
But I do think, you can take out time to listen to a podcast, a blog. You could write a blog and share it with other people. I think we need to maintain the art of storytelling and the art of listening to a story as well, because that's how we will continue to learn as we move forward.
Just give me a quick show of hands. How many people blog regularly? Okay. How many people went on an online course that wasn't given by their company in the last year? That I like. Well done. How many people own an Alexa or a Google Home Assistant? Interesting. Okay, Brilliant. All right, that takes me quite nicely on segue, some might say, to...
You never know where it's going to go with
you
Paul.
never know, do you? Right, so it's 5 o'clock, so we have exactly 60 minutes until Apple literally throws the gauntlet down and says, here's the brand new iPhone, which is just a little bit different than the last one, and yes, you'll buy it.
Probably with a new charger.
Probably with a new charger, exactly, that's the thing. Fingers crossed, yeah. But there are rumours, and they've kind of announced it already, that the new watch, which will be 5, I think, is going to be more about cycle tracking, sleep tracking, and that sort of thing. Are we giving big tech an open goal to win the health wars, or do you think that it's not too late to change it?
In what sense?
So in the sense that these men and women over in Silicon Valley and other parts of the world are making huge bets on health, right? So they've sold over 100 million of the things that are on my wrist, and other people, Samsung and everyone else is doing it. They are getting so much data on us that could, hopefully, be better used by the people in this room, but they don't have access to it, or it's not easy to get access to it and that sort of thing. Apple has shown a couple of years now that they are partnering with universities, but it's slow and behind closed doors a lot of the time. So how do you compete with that?
Yeah, it's very difficult, isn't it? I think when Matt Hancock is here tomorrow, we have to insist that he finds a way to open up that data, because it is very useful. It's also a great question to ask the Secretary of State, how he's going to make that happen.
I can't wait to hear that from Matt, I must admit. But so please do remember to ask Matt.
But
that.
I do, on a serious note, I think data is being collected by lots of companies. And there are a number of things associated with that. Are the companies getting rich on that data? Yes. People used to say that data is the new oil, but my friend, I can tell you that you are the new oil, because they are mining everything about you, everything that you may want to do and everything you've done in the past. And it's out in the wild, I'm afraid. And I would just say there's 2 parts to that. One is we have to decide what we want to have out there. The companies should be acting responsibly and having a code of ethics around what they do with these vast data lakes. Because, there's so much out there. We were talking earlier about the app that came out of China around the fake video app that came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
On a Friday, millions of users had put in 15 shots of their faces, 15 different shots of their faces. And from those 15 different shots, a fake video of you could be created. And it was a bit of fun. And then you look at the code of ethics behind the app, and it said, we can use this data whenever, wherever, sell it to whomever we like.
In perpetuity.
In perpetuity. And within 3 days, there was such a backlash that they had to revamp their policy. Now, the problem with that is that they already had collected
hundreds of millions of people's faces because it was in China, and that's easy to do on a weekend.
And what that does is, all those apps that says, would you like to use fake ID?
What apps are you using, Jacqueline?
I've got it on the brain. Face ID to open your apps. Right, all of those, that's what that data lake can unlock. And so, it's just something to think about when we're developing and designing and giving away our data, because let's face it, we will do anything for free Wi-Fi. You would give away your firstborn for free Wi-Fi. Go, come on, get me on this Wi-Fi.
Warwick University asked my phone number today.
Right.
And I was just like, why?
So,
but anyway, never mind.
But it's quite,
it's
isn't it interesting? So there is a two-way street here. The companies have a big responsibility on their ethics policies and what they do with your data, but we also have to be mindful of what we give away as well and what we're prepared to give away.
So let's talk a bit more about design, because I think that's an important part of certainly what people in the audience are doing and where we need to sort of go as societies and that sort of thing. When you are designing apps, whether it's smoking cessation or fitness or whatever it is and that sort of thing, your ability to collect data is 100%, right? So you can collect as much as people want to give you. How do you help people understand that they don't need to collect 100% of data? It is sometimes in the best interest to do that. It is expensive, more expensive to do it and that sort of thing, but you actually don't need that amount of data. And I think that there is an argument to say the level of trust in your app organization and that sort of thing is instantly and infinitely diminished by the amount of text on your how much data we're going to collect bit, which every app has to have. Would you agree that those are part of the problem, or they're a necessary sort of evil that we have to have? How do we judge that?
I think the whole problem with tech in general is that we make it difficult to understand for the normal citizen. Mm-hmm. And we hide behind legalese, terms and conditions. And, we need to ask more simple questions like, are you happy for your data to be used in this way? And I think if we have that sort of, dumb it down, if you will, mm-hmm. to very simple questions and not make it complex, not legalese, then I think that's much more accessible anyway. The other problem with tech is that we wall ourselves up behind 3-letter acronyms all the time as well. Oh, God, yeah. And we could do ourselves a favour and cull those, I think.
So when along the process, is that design, is it halfway through and that sort of thing, where should people be putting their hands up and saying, I think we might be asking for too much data here? Is that at the beginning?
Always.
Is that ideation?
Always.
Always. So every step along the way?
Every step along the way. And actually, most companies will collect lots of data, yep. and they will because they want to resell it.
Yep.
However, I think as the public becomes more savvy about data responsibility and privacy, I think the apps and tech companies that will win are ones that are responsible businesses, because the next generation are much more all about, responsible living and work life and climate, of course, as well. Mm-hmm. But I think this will all come into the same thing. We want purpose. We want profit balanced with purpose. And I think that will come out very strongly in the next generation of tech.
I certainly hope so, I must admit. So let's just give an example. So Facebook recently said, it's okay, guys, don't worry about your photos. We're not going to scan them for your face anymore. Because we've already got it 100 times. But we're really good people and that sort of stuff. How do we make those technology companies understand that that's a really shitty thing to do, and that sort of thing? How do we get them to be ethical from the beginning when they have stakeholders and, what do you call it? It's a bit... stakeholders and profits that they like. That was the word. I forgot the word profits. That was crazy. Yeah. We had it a little bit in a session previously with KFC and Tesco and the ice cream company here. Excellent. Let's talk about them. So they're all literally have. Oh, but apparently, what is it? 4.8 visits a year. 4.5 million customers. No, 4.5% of the market. Sorry, about 18 million customers. Crazy numbers and that sort of thing. Lots of fried chicken. Not all sustainable. We're doomed. But anyway, they're going into jackfruit, so I've been told. Right. But it's not selling. That's the trouble. Anyway, right, let's quickly talk about... so they have lots of profits, and they're obviously wanting to guard those. They do still want a planet for us to live on because that means they can still make money. But at the same time...
I've lost the thread.
I know, it's all right. I'm coming back to it. So when you've got those sorts of like profits and stakeholders and that sort of stuff, like how do you bring people back? Like, how do you sell them the tech story and be like, Nirvana is not just mugging people for data all the time?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, well, fish rots from their head down, I think.
You heard it here first. Sorry. Can you just explain that?
Well,
is that an actual fit?
Yes, I think what it is that
why is that?
Leadership matters. So it comes from the top. And I think, tomorrow as well with, that is a thing, actually.
No, I'm just, it must work. Yeah, sure. That's the one thing they'll remember.
That and KFC.
Right, all right, we'll do it. Okay.
Focus.
Yep.
When Matt Hancock is here tomorrow, what he will tell you is that he will get companies like Facebook and Google all around the table, and he will talk to them about smart partnerships. And actually, I think it starts there. It's at the leadership level where we decide as a country how we're going to have a smart partnership with companies that are bigger than the size of many countries. And
Jacqueline, I'm going to go in deep. All right. Okay. Do we think Mr. Matt Hancock and Mr. Facebook are going to shake hands and be like, Facebook, be like, sure, Matt, whatever you want? We were wrong at the beginning to do it and that sort of stuff. How does Matt wield his influence? Is it a block? Is it Facebook's evil campaign? Or what do we do?
I think it's probably policy.
Yeah.
I think it's probably policy. And we have, as a country, got to decide so many other things first. We said we weren't going to talk about
we're not, don't mention it.
Don't
mention it.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
We don't need any neighbours.
Nope.
No, we haven't got any neighbours.
Who? Yeah, right, okay.
So, yeah, I really lost the thread now.
Matt Hancock telling Facebook where to go, and Facebook telling Matt
No,
Hancock where to go.
So I think it is about policy. It's about the health of the nation. How do we really make sure that we allow companies to thrive in this country and make sure we do the right thing for data? And I think he has to ask some very challenging questions of anybody who wants to make and keep profit in this country if it's going to serve our public health needs.
So let's talk about the NHS for a sec. Coming back to it, see how I grounded it right there. Local national government, NHS, tech industry, they collaborate, but it's sort of like magnets sometimes. Sometimes they do it really well, sometimes they do it too well, sometimes they do it... When you think about things like Babylon Health and how they're sort of going in, and Alexa with Amazon, how they're reading web pages, and everybody thinks that's the coming of Jesus or whatever omnipotent being you believe in, where does that go? Like, how does that help? Don't we need a framework? Like, aren't we like pushing in the wrong direction? How do we make it?
I don't know if we need frameworks. Where I think the best technology and partnerships come together is where we all come behind a problem that we're solving together. And I'll give you a great example of the London Underground. So when we put the tap and go technology into the tube, has anyone tried that? Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So before we did that, everyone was worried about can we build faster ticket machines? Can we manage the queues better in the summer when all the tourists descend on us? And actually, no one thought about the real problem, which is how do we get people through the barriers without breaking a stride? And the tap and go technology is actually 16-year-old technology built by the banks, which wasn't used, it was on the shelf. But the moment you put that into the underground, it probably elongated the life of Victoriana infrastructure by about 20 years. Think about that. So it's not necessarily bleeding edge technology that always makes a difference. It's usually technology that's applied well behind solving a problem that really matters. And I think the genius in that story is spotting the problem that really matters. It's not faster ticket machines. It's not queue management. It's how do we get people through quickly? And the same thing happens. I don't know if you've been into a Pizza Express recently or any restaurant actually. You have a lovely meal, you've got an hour, and then you want to go. You try and get the waiter or waitress's attention to get the bill, and after 5 or 10 minutes they bring it, but they don't bring the machine. And you're sitting there thinking, kill me now. Mm-hmm. I want to go. And eventually they bring the machine. And
a smile.
And they go, how was your meal? And you go, I'm not tipping you. Right, you think that. You do think that.
Bad Londoners.
Bad Londoners, I know. My point, though, is that is another point of friction. That thing that we live with every single day. And there is an app called Flyt, F-L-Y-T.
And you're not on the board for?
No, I'm not on the board for, and I don't advise them. But you can download this app, pop in your table number, pay and go. And I love that. But what I love about it most is it's the same as the London Underground scenario where someone has articulated the problem and solved it with a really fast app. And that is where we can come together with all sorts of different groups and communities with different agendas. But if we've got a specific and big, hairy problem to solve, that's when you convene and you get communities working together and you stop the silos, because it matters.
So let's give the other side to that coin, okay? Fast forward, take a trip, you're in China, and you have walked through your barriers and you've had your face scanned 3 times. Mm-hmm. You are now in the central government's database, and that means that you can travel with your face. That also means that there is a database of good and bad people based on that face being attached to your passport number, bank details, and all of that sort of thing. Now, we don't have that in our system over here. However, there are more cameras in London than any other city, and there is facial recognition that's coming. That's already here in vans and that sort of stuff. I'm not saying we're going the same way. I don't think I think there would be riots in the street if that happened. But I do see that there is merit in having a centralised system for that sort of stuff. How do we make sure, how do we use those systems to our advantage, but not go into what we like to call dark, evil, bastard territory?
Or Black Mirror, if you haven't
Or
seen
Black
it,
Mirror,
watch
yeah,
Black
yeah.
Mirror. That's a great question, and I think it comes down to ethics, which is that, let's say we were at Wembley and we were using facial recognition at Wembley instead of checking bags, which, let's face it, when someone checks a bag at Wembley, you could really be bringing anything in and no one really knows, because they just have a look and go, yeah, thanks. I think that I would like to say, yes, I'd be happy to have facial recognition at a large human event, because if there was a problem, I'd prefer tech to be able to look for the few that were causing a problem or creating trends that were out of the ordinary rather than checking the many. So I think it's a question of transparency and ethics and how we apply it. Because who wouldn't want to go to a concert and know they were secure? I mean, there are scenarios where we want that. I mean, in England, though, we can't even decide whether to have a central identity system, let alone full-blown facial recognition. So I think it's, but yet...
Do you think it's coming?
You can't uninvent it.
That's also,
Just saying.
That's also so true.
But what I will say is that we put so much data out there ourselves. We do. The DNA gift that you gave everyone for Christmas last year, did anyone give anyone a gift of that? Where did you come from thing?
Hands up who's had their genome sequenced. Wow.
Not many.
Hands up who hasn't had it sequenced because they didn't know it was cheap. Or they thought it was creepy as hell.
Yeah, as well. Well, last year I gave like 10 people this DNA thing. Where did you come from? And they go, yeah, I came from Africa. And there's no... And yet, to my horror, I've just realised it's all going into this great big data lake.
Yeah. So we actually, let's talk
So I'm
about
not
that.
giving it this Christmas.
It's too late.
Too late, I know.
But that's a really good point. So data lake over there, let's say Ancestry.com, 23andMe, those sorts of people. What happens if they ever sell to another company?
Yeah.
Is that something that these guys, when they're making stuff and thinking about it, should they be building that into contracts? Help them help other people?
Yeah, I think we have to figure out a responsible code of ethics about how we deal with the data in the applications that we're building, for sure. I mean, reselling of data is never a good thing when it comes to privacy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Babylon. No, there was another company. Shout it. Oh, no, similar. No, let's not get there. I get very angry with that company, right. But another time, and I'm with you. Right. God, step back, right.
We're in the abyss.
Yeah, we are. Well, let's talk about voice for a sec. We've got 3 minutes. So we will have questions. Please start thinking of them. Hands up. We're going to go old school. Make them difficult because I don't have to answer them. Right, so voice. So NHS just done a deal with Amazon. You can now read a web page out. How's that helping? Is that a good thing? Is voice going to be the next omnipotent being? 32% of people, say that it's their favourite method of input on a device. Is that good?
Well, okay, it depends who you are and your context, I think. My mother has dementia, and Alexa is the best thing that ever happened for my mother. She can ask Alexa 24 times an hour what the time is, and Alexa doesn't get pissed off.
Should Alexa get pissed off? No.
It could learn that, potentially. But, the point is...
When it starts, it just goes, 9:45.
Point is that, for some people who are isolated, I actually think, or who can't read because they're blind, so to make things accessible through voice, I think is a big window to the world for some people. And actually, it's faster to say something than to type something. So in a way, I think Alexa is an amazing thing. Where I think it's a little bit troubling is when it
Has the word Amazon at the front?
When it sends you, holiday suggestions about where you could go this summer, when you've been talking about Barbados in the kitchen with your husband. And actually there is this joke where I think it goes something like this. God, I hope I can remember it. It says, we were talking about holidays in the kitchen, my husband and I were mentioning Barbados and Venice and Bermuda. And my husband said to me, "Why are you whispering?" And I said, "Because I don't want Alexa to hear me." And then he laughed, and Siri laughed. Oh. And Alexa laughed. My point
so we've already got it.
Yeah. So if you have it on, it's a listening device. It's a hackable listening device. It's an advertising, targeted, thing. And it's, at its base level, it's a thing of beauty. You just have to decide how much intervention you want in your life. What's interesting is that Google, as an example, it harvests your eyeball movements, if you didn't know that. So when you're watching, you're looking at your screen, it harvests your eyeball movements. Why does it do that? It does that because, I shouldn't just say Google, actually, all search engines do this. And what it does is it will, as an example, sell that data to someone like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Why? Because when they show you the advert of Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they'll figure out what your preferences are. So if your preference is women in the park or men in the park, it'll notice which one you like. It can probably tell your 16-year-old whether they're gay or straight before they know. They don't necessarily do that, but they know it because of the adverts they show you. You go into the park on Saturday, on a really hot day, and you'll buy Coke versus Pepsi, and you think that's free will. You think that's free will.
There was that famous one, it's got like 6 or 7 years ago now, where Walmart sent a coupon in the mail to a dad's daughter and say, "Congratulations, here's your free Pampers," and all of that sort of thing. I'm contextualising for the UK. And he went absolutely ballistic because he was like, "Only 16, are you crazy? Like, that's nuts." And she went, "Dad, we should probably talk." And there was a court case about it and that sort of thing. And he actually won. But
because she was pregnant.
Because she was pregnant.
And she'd been looking at something online and therefore it targeted.
Google, all her own sign-ups and that sort of thing. And that sort of. I think there's something really interesting when you start overlaying that sort of data and context where we can find out so much about people, preventative and that sort of thing, which I think is a great message and certainly a good thing to sort of push forward. How do we get people to think more like that? So, like, we don't just need to collect everything. We need to collect this, and that will tell us this.
Yeah, I think it's about targeted. Collect what you need. Usually you can collect it in a trended way versus a specific and personal way. We probably, in the UK, need to think about how we put our data in some kind of privacy passport so that you collect the data, but not necessarily with the naming convention on it, as an example. And I think once we do that at the centre, then it'll make life a lot easier for everybody. You can suggest that to Matt tomorrow, as an example.
Absolutely, go for it. Send him a note. PHE England Conference 19. So, we'll do some questions. Anyone got anything burning? Hopefully a question. Gentleman in the middle. We're coming. Sorry, steps involved.
He's making the microphone runners work really hard.
Thank you. You've talked a lot about responsible tech, but my question is responsible according to whom? Like, who should be the organisation or group to actually set this? Because a lot of the big tech companies like Google have AI codes of conduct and that kind of thing, but frankly, they're rubbish. They talk about societal benefits, and why the hell should Google be the ones to determine societal benefits? So who do you think should be the organisation that actually sets these types of things?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's evolving, but I think there are organisations like the Turing Institute who are creating ethics frameworks and standards. They probably need to be joined up globally as well. It's so new, and we are so far behind. So I don't think there's an easy answer, but for sure, what's true is that we need to keep in mind that principles need to not be overcomplicated, and they need to stay with us for forever. And I guess it's a bit like Blade Runner and the rules. Inside the three principles, I can't remember what they were. Someone in the room probably can.
Don't kill humans.
Yeah, don't kill humans is definitely one of them.
I like that one.
I like that one. Don't kill female humans more.
Yeah.
I like that one.
I mean, that's the way to make a population, isn't it?
Hashtag diversity. Anyway, yeah.
It's a good one. That's actually a fantastic question, that sort of thing. And I kind of think there should be no one organisation that has that. I think it's very dangerous as soon as one person has something, because allegiances can change, people can move. The issue with that is that there is a consortium in Silicon Valley where they've basically said, we would love to join together and share everything, because we're great people, and like, stakeholders be damned, AI is important. And we all went, have they been taken over? This is great. And then they've literally shared how to spell AI, which is great publicly because it's important spelling. But at the same time, it's like they're not being forced to do anything. And I think there's some, like you said earlier, like we've got to have, like from the beginning, design it right and that sort of thing. But there will always be those stakeholders breathing down your neck to make more money until we make those things ourselves, which is why I think the interesting part of Voice is Beeb, when they're coming out with their new voice thing next year as well. Very interesting. Good question. Hand up at the back.
So this is a similar question in a way. It's about corporate responsibility. So we have this incredibly modern industry that seems to be behind the curve in corporate responsibility and not learning the lessons that kind of, I suppose, stakeholders have forced out of other companies over the years. So, for example, said drinks company saw its corporate responsibility for obesity for many years as sponsoring a bit of physical activity. We know that the tech companies are making a lot of money through advertising, and they're kind of saying, don't look at it, because over here we're paying for some, Facebook are paying for stuff, aren't they, for blood donation in India, and that's great, but it's distracting from the...
stealing of all our data.
Yeah. And using that to advertise at us and not sharing any of that big data that comes through that. And I suppose it's how do you accelerate the corporate responsibility piece to be in a more meaningful place than it currently is?
I think on that one is, again, I think as a country we have to decide what we're prepared to tolerate in terms of parameters for collecting and using data and privacy and ethics inside the way companies operate here. Once you do that, and let's face it, this is the 5th largest trading nation on earth. You know, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we can say we won't have you operating here, or we'll have you operating at a higher tax level, which will hurt them more actually, if you aren't operating within the ethical norms. Now, we have to create the ethical norms, but we have to make sure they happen. And I think we have to accelerate that. I certainly think we need to put more effort into shaping those ethics and privacy guidelines much faster.
All right.
It's a very good question.
One at the back, one at the front.
I'm going to ask a sort of more positive question, if you like, about how can we make sure that the benefits of new technologies are available across all age groups. So I'm thinking, my mother-in-law who stopped developing or using new technologies at the age of mid-50s, right up to days up till then, but when she was 80-something, she had a 30-year-old sort of view of technology, and yet I think all my and my wife's parents would have hugely benefited from driverless cars, for example. But actually, I'll bet that when they come through, they're aimed at younger people, not at older people who actually would retain independence from them.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the lifelong learning interventions, so that we create a world where everybody is included. If you think about the advent of digital first, actually what we've created is digital only, and that's a problem, because isolation is going to happen much more often, especially as we have an aging population. So I think we have to have more interventions for age ranges, that diversity is really, really important, and we have to find ways where we can engage older people. I think there was a really interesting experiment at Argos where they were teaching their customers, and they were an older demographic on certain days because they had special offers then, and they were teaching them to order online on an iPad in store. Mm-hmm. And if they did that successfully, they got the iPad, I think, for not the iPad, a tablet for £10 to take home with them, and they taught them how to FaceTime through it and things like that. So I think it's responsible interventions like that in places where they would normally go would make a massive difference. And it doesn't cost a lot, but it does come under the CSR agenda for corporates, actually.
Great answer. At the front. Go for it.
Hi, fascinating dialogue, thank you. I'm about to start a new role with the Academic Health Science Network, and the role is primarily technical navigator, sourcing innovation in technology and generating savings in the NHS through this technology. And obviously I haven't started in role yet, but one of the primary concerns I have is how to broker this relationship between two potentially conflicting but not necessarily sectors, with the primary goal always being to save the NHS money, and also I'd really like to develop positive symbiotic relationships with the tech companies that I'm introducing to the NHS for the NHS's benefit. So what would your recommendations be in terms of communicating with these two industries?
Well, the first thing I would say is I think you've got a brilliant hand to play in this role, because the NHS is an enormous procurer of stuff and services. And I think you hold all the aces there, which is, you've got an opportunity which could create 1 + 1 = 11, not only in terms of the noble cause, which is to support the NHS, but secondly, to be a tech supplier is one of scale. It's one where they can test, they can learn, but they can also return good margins, not necessarily the same margins as in the commercial sector, but good margins, and also have a noble cause at the same time. So I think you hold all the aces. I think that's all about storytelling and creating that 1 + 1 = 11.
I'm going to take 2 very short questions, and that was a cue to make it short. Go for it.
Okay. You talked a bit about ethical frameworks and corporate responsibility, government policy. What about data security, hacking, the proportion of the population who's been experienced financial fraud, and how much confidence people have got in our data being held?
We were told to keep it light.
Can I just ask, what specifically is the question?
Partly, is it really the real sort of confidence and safety, and then there's the consumer perception of that. So
Yeah.
sort of 2 angles.
Okay.
What is your role in it, or?
Nothing, just...
No, what is the role?
Sorry, I'm Nikki Connor from Public Health England.
Nikki, what is the question though? What is the role for health people or people
Well,
in general?
I was really interested that you haven't talked about it.
Yeah, cyber.
Whereas I think that's a big, thick gap in what the public think about it.
Yeah. Well, so I work quite closely with the National Cyber Security Centre, and for example, 2 or 3 years ago, you would have got many emails saying, you are due a refund from HMRC. Do you remember those? Have you seen one recently? No. You haven't seen them because they've automatically been blocked by the National Cyber Security Centre. And so there's a lot that happens anyway under the covers. More is foiled before it even gets to you. So let's just put that in one bucket. In terms of cyber breaches, 2/3 of cyber breaches come from internal people, so insider hacks. It's usually the lowest common denominator, and a lot of it is because we put passwords under our keyboards and things like that, or we have the same password for everything. The most popular password is still password.
How is that possible?
I know, but it is. Or password backwards. Or you go onto Facebook and see someone's pet's name, and guess what? The password. It's not hard. This is not hard stuff. So all I'm saying is that there is a dramatic difference that we can make ourselves. There's a lot that's happening at central government in the National Cybersecurity Centre and GCHQ. And then the rest of it, most of it is quite targeted. So if you think about the hack that took the NHS down 2 years ago, was it now?
Yep.
That actually was a nation-state attack, but it wasn't really aimed at the NHS, because if you're going to take a company down for ransomware, you probably wouldn't take the NHS, because they probably got least amount of money. It was a bit random. So it was just a random
It's definitely
attack.
a strategy, isn't it?
But it was a random attack that attacked companies that hadn't upgraded to the latest releases. And so there is some hygiene that needs to happen. Whatever happens, by the way, top tip, don't ever pay the ransom. But I'm just saying that, cyber is also, it's a two-way street, and there is a lot being done on cyber, but there's a lot of personal responsibility we have to take there as well. We have to design it in.
Sorry. Right, gentleman at the front, I don't have time for your question. I have time mentally for it, but put it on Twitter and we'll answer it. We've got 1 minute because I've been given the we want to drink sign. So I haven't told you this, but we're going to do quickfire. Are you ready for it?
No.
Exactly, right. All right, ready? So you've got 1 minute, you've got to answer as many questions as quickly as you can, okay? So, quickfire, Alexa or Google Assistant?
Neither.
Who's more trustworthy, Facebook or Google?
Neither.
Beyonce or Taylor Swift?
Beyonce.
Sit up or stand down meeting?
Stand up.
Hug at work or no hug at work?
Always hug.
You've got 10 minutes free, what do?
Sleep.
Love Island or hate Love Island?
Don't know Love Island.
Yes. The social stigma society needs to get over?
Racism.
That was a gift, I like that. Donate your body to science or organs to people?
Organs to people.
Would you rather live 1,000-year life or 10 100-year lives?
10 100-year lives.
Okay, you've got to kill one, kitten or puppy?
Kitten.
Oh. Biggest inspiration?
It's not you.
All right, we'll end it there. Awesome. Please keep that pain going for Jacqueline. Thank you very much.